You are watching Hawkeye Hangout here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, an action-packed show this evening as we count down the days to Hawkeye football. Good to see a few people already in the chat. We are going to have a great show with a all-time great Hawkeye. Mr. Tavian Banks is here this evening. He's in our queue waiting to talk Hawkeye football, talk about his career. Certainly going to get his perspective on Iowa's offense, given the fact that he was an electrifying skill position player, and that's certainly a huge need for Hawkeye Nation in 2022. So we'll get Tavian's thoughts on a number of subjects. We'll open up the call lines, drop your questions and your comments in the chat, and we will get to them over the next hour. We're here from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Again, counting down the days to Hawkeye football. So again, in just moments, Hawkeye great Tavian Banks will join the show. But first, a word from our sponsor. You may have heard of the real-life Hawkeye man cave known as Kinnick Under the Kitchen. Well, after lots of hard work, there's not much space left to paint, but the walls are exploding out for public consumption. Under the Kitchen is proud to announce that you can now purchase exclusive prints of some of your favorite Hawkeye legends, including wrestling great Spencer Lee, football players Tyler Goodson, Riley Moss, and Drew Tate, plus an all-in-one Murray family legacy print featuring Keegan, Chris, and Kenyon Murray himself. Signed and unsigned prints are available, making the perfect collectible or gift for any Hawkeye enthusiast. For more information on purchasing one of these outstanding Hawkeye prints, visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook. That's Under the Kitchen on Facebook. So appreciate Under the Kitchen, Randy Engel doing awesome work, as we say each and every week. And without further ado, we welcome the one and only Tavian Banks to the show. Mr. Tavian Banks, how are you today?
I'm great. Where was my print?
Right? I know we haven't gotten your print in. You're a part of this now.
Right?
I mean, maybe we should put in an extra plug for Randy Engel. You know Randy, and
yes, I know Randy.
Worked with him, and I don't know that I haven't talked to Randy here the last few days. Has the print officially dropped yet?
I don't know if it's officially dropped. I had to sign them all, so but I don't know when the drop is happening. To be honest with you, but yes, I signed them all.
Yeah, great stuff. And for anybody who's wondering, Randy Engel with Under the Kitchen will be at Fry Fest, so he'll have a booth at Fry Fest. People can check out whether it be a print of Tavian Banks or current players like Arlen Bruce. And I know more. I don't want to release anything that's that Randy has not released, but more in the hopper of some current and future Hawkeyes. So great stuff. And Tavian, appreciate you taking the time this evening. We're counting down the days to Hawkeye football here, August 26th. It seems like the offseason went by quickly, although I know you're a busy guy. Before we get to football and all that fun stuff, can you update Hawkeye Nation? Because I'll be honest, you're not a guy I see like in a bunch of interviews. It doesn't seem like you love the spotlight, which I respect. You seem like a humble guy. Update Hawkeye fans as to what Tavian Banks keeps his time busy with nowadays.
Executive director at the YMCA in Greater Des Moines is my current position. I would say been there going on 3 years now.
Mm-hmm. What do you love about that?
Well, the YMCA, I mean, just giving back for me, a lot of things that, I was fortunate enough to be a part of a lot of different things and a lot of different training, in my sports performance background, a lot of different programs I've been able to create and help a lot of different people with. And a lot of different genres and things like that too. So it's been a great feeling for me to be able to give back, especially, come back here in Iowa and help a lot of people, like I was a kid, from Iowa and things like that too. So being able to help more so is what I love doing.
And you live in the Des Moines metro area, correct?
Yep.
How do you like you must like Central Iowa. You stuck here. Have you lived in Central Iowa since you graduated?
No, I've been all over the place. So when I graduated, I was drafted by Jacksonville. A short NFL career. I got a career-ending injury, unfortunately. But I've lived in New Orleans, Atlanta, California. Just a lot of different places. Illinois. So just been all over a little bit.
But you find your roots back home, and
yes. Moved back to Iowa about like 6 years ago, I believe now. I've been back in Iowa in 6 years. Moved kind of like moved to Des Moines because it's kind of like where I came from. I was in Naperville area for about 14 years or so before moving here back to Iowa.
Interesting. And if for anybody that doesn't know, you were in Jacksonville for how many years were you in Jacksonville?
I was there three years, but I was playing 2 years before my injury. I got hurt. So I got hurt in my second year when I was there.
I'm curious to get your perspective again before we get to Iowa football. Things have changed so much since you were at Iowa, and the game of college football has evolved. Some believe for the worse, some believe for the best. Certainly, there's more freedom for the athlete. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. Are you kind of old school and say, hey, it's bad for the sport, or are you kind of thinking it's the NIL progression and the portal giving more freedom to the players? Is that a long time coming?
I would say it's been a long time coming. For most people, I believe that like this stuff was going on before in NIL and stuff like that. So now it's just it's more in the open, and people are talking about it more so. Before it was just done in the dark, if that makes sense. But now it's all in the light, so you don't have to hide or doing that type of stuff. So I'm happy for the student athletes are able to take advantage of like some of these deals and stuff. I hope for them they're being smart with it and investing or whatever they want to do with the type of money that they're going to be making. But hopefully like they make good choices and decisions with it. But I think it's a great thing for like the student athletes that are able to take advantage of it.
One thing, and I don't want to get off on this tangent about NIL necessarily, but one thing I do believe there needs to be more priority towards is, and I'm not certainly implying that anybody, how they spend their money is their own business, but a young person who's 18 or 19 who's all of a sudden, making 6 or even 7 figures due to the NIL changes. I think there's a lot of development that goes on between the ages of 18 and 23 when a normal kid from pre-NIL era, and I know there was some of that going on behind closed doors and beneath the table, but I think there is maturity that goes on between those 5 years. There needs to be more training and help for young individuals to be able to manage that money and perhaps invest. I mean, am I correct in saying that? Because I think that's a dangerous thing, giving young people, although they may feel like they know how to manage money, in reality, you don't at that age.
No, I mean, for a lot of people too, like, there's other, sports or whatever case where you can make money at a young age or when you're turning professional and things like that too. So, I believe the universities are these people, they're getting the help that they need. A lot of universities are putting in place where you're getting training or they're having people come in and talk about money management and all those type of things that are getting in place earlier now. Like when in professional sports, they do have symposiums and all that type of stuff where they talk about management and money and all those things. And most professional teams do that also. But now, obviously, you're going to have to be doing that in college a lot earlier than they did before. So now I'm sure it's a part of, coming into a university. They have all types of training that's going to be going on nowadays.
Is the NCAA just basically becoming obsolete in your mind? Is it just going to eventually be where college football just splits away from the NCAA and says, you know what? Because what governance really is there besides this? I don't want to say it's a mirage, but it's basically this face that the NCAA puts on. Oh, we got to approve waivers and we got to make sure there's no violations going on. When in reality, as you brought up, there have been things going on under the table for years. There really is no regulation on the transfer portal. Guys, have the one-time transfer rule now, but then if they, I saw a kid the other day who's transferred like 4 times and he's gotten the waiver every time. Do you think the NCAA has a chance at keeping any degree of power in the coming years?
I think it's going to be tough, meaning because there's I don't think there's any rhyme or reason when, like you just mentioned, the guy that transferred 4 times or whatever case, like, how did he get a continuing waiver at each place he was transferring to? You know what I mean? Like, how does that happen? Then somebody else is not, given a waiver to transfer 1 time or whatever it might be. So who really regulates all that type of stuff? Like if there's no checks and balances, to signify or whatever, or justify any of that stuff, like how does it keep going on? So I would just believe it'll just be tough to continue to have those things go on, and especially nowadays when you can transfer, as much as kids want to right now.
Tavian, let's transition a bit towards Iowa football. I know you're a busy guy and you got a family, and so
Yep.
it's certainly your priorities change as you get older and you have a family, certainly. But you live in Iowa, you follow Iowa football.
Yep.
How has Iowa football specifically changed? Because there's this perception from the outside world that it's been the same here for 40 some years. We've had 2 head coaches, and Kirk is a product of Hayden. That's really not accurate. The premise of Iowa football has changed completely. You really look at the offenses back in your era, and certainly prior to your era in the 80s, things have changed substantially, have they not?
Oh, definitely have. Just college football in general. Just even in professional sports or whatever case too. It just changes. Players evolve, coaching evolves, schemes evolve. Everything always gets more and more and more. So everything is going to change. As everybody's looking for the next new thing or the next new play or the next player that's going to be able to do this, that, and the third. So it's always going to evolve and it's always going to change.
I'm curious. I got to get your take on the offense. That's the biggest conversation, Tavian. And I know it's for some people, it's a very uncomfortable conversation because I think most Iowa fans, Kirk Ferentz is an endearing personality.
Yep.
I really respect Kirk as an individual. I'm sure you do as well. But the dynamic with Brian is uncomfortable, right? When you have your son who's putting out offenses that are just not very good. In his defense, they weren't very good under Ken O'Keefe or under Greg Davis either. But how would you address? I know that's a loaded question, and we're a week into the season, so maybe it's not the best time to ask this question, but I want to ask you anyways. How would you address Iowa's struggles? Where do the problems start? Do they start with the quarterback? Do they start with schematics, or do they start with the offensive line?
I don't know. Again, Iowa has produced a lot of professional athletes, especially in football, and even under Kirk Ferentz, regime. So he's done a fantastic job of coaching and those type of things with the current players that he has and the players that he's coached. So it can't be that, meaning like the players and stuff. There's a ton of guys in the offensive line, ton of guys at tight end. There's a couple guys at quarterback and stuff. I think there's some wide receivers also and stuff. So our offense is just, it's been loaded with talent and things like that. I to be honest with you, I have no idea like why it doesn't translate to the game per se. I would say it's just, like for me, it's always just become like an Iowa. That's the way they've played, all these years and stuff. They really haven't had like a great dynamic offense, in my recollection, for a long time. It's just been mundane, just, might be a big play here or there every once in a while, but it's not consistent like to that I remember.
I know you're not as invested as you were 30 years ago or 25 years ago, but
it's been long already, right?
I don't want to make you feel old. But does that get hard to watch from your perspective, being a running back, being a skill position player? Because let's be honest, Tavian, you brought up and I'm going to play devil's advocate here. You're right. Absolutely. Iowa's developed under Kirk Ferentz the number of tight ends in the league, the number of offensive linemen. You've got linebackers all over the league. You've got defensive backs all over the league. But there are not wide receivers all over the league from Iowa. There are not running backs. Hopefully Tyler Goodson can change that, and Mekhi Sargent's still fighting, but they have not been able to recruit great skill position talent, or at least develop, or both, since Kirk's been here. Now, there have been a few years, you think of the 2009, 2010 year with DJK and Marvin McNutt and those guys, but even those guys didn't make it at the next level. Why is it? What do you think the barrier is with recruits? Why is it that they can recruit all these other positions, be elite defensively, elite on special teams, but they can't seem to recruit great skill position talent?
I mean, to be honest with you, I do think that they have been able to recruit the talent, because there's a lot, again, there's a lot of guys coming into the University of Iowa. I just don't, I'm not for certain like why, certain players haven't panned out or what's happening, like when they get to the university or anything like that. I couldn't really speak on that because I'm not close to the program like that or anything. Um, but again, there's been, like Sean Green and some of these guys that have played a little bit in the league and stuff too. They just haven't, been, like the, superstar, whatever NFL player and stuff like that. But there has been some guys that have played, from skill positions too.
Tavian, when you were here, and you went through it, and there were your fair share of struggles, ups and downs, right? I think every
Yeah.
athlete, for the most part, unless you play at an Alabama, in 2022, or you played at Clemson 2018, 17, and there, you're going to deal with some ups and downs. How did those ups and downs when you were here prepare you for the real world?
I mean, like anything can happen, especially in sports. I sat behind, great running backs at Iowa. There was Ryan Terry, and then Cedric Shaw. And I learned a lot, like from those guys when I was coming up and stuff. Yes, I believe that I could have played a lot more, whatever the case, but it just wasn't in the scheme or whatever the case may be back then. So there's always like a learning curve or any type of stuff that happens. I was grateful to be a part of that. A lot of my friends and stuff like that kept me going through all those years and things too. So again, it just prepares you like different things in life, that everything's not going to go your way. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. What are you going to do when it's not? What are you going to do when it does? Like it just prepares you. That's kind of like what life is sometimes too. You never know what you're going to get. I told somebody this the other day. It's like the Forrest Gump movie. It's life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So that's what it is.
I got to ask you, as you know, we have Coach Don Patterson on this show a lot, and you and I we're just chatting about Don before we went live. Don, of course, was I believe the only assistant coach, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe the only assistant coach that was with Hayden Fry his entire time here. And of course, he was with Hayden Fry at North Texas too. But you think of the coaching tree, and maybe sometimes he is a guy that doesn't get brought up because you got Bill Snyder, who ended up, being a legend at Kansas State, and Dan McCarney went to Iowa State, and obviously Barry, and I mean, just going on the list. But Don became the winningest head coach in Western Illinois history.
Yes.
I think he would have been, in hindsight, I'm not saying Kirk certainly has worked out here. I think he would have been a terrific head coach at Iowa. That's my opinion in 1999. But what was Don like as a coach? I know he
He's great. He's
earlier.
office coordinator when I was there at Iowa.
Right.
Like we had some really good, years there. I mean, like offensively and stuff. My junior and senior year, we had a lot of talent, especially on offense side. We had some great defense talent, but on offense, we really had some showstoppers, I would say. I mean, it was always great working with Coach P. All the time, and like he was just always patient and always just willing to give his time and effort and everything else. That's what you want from a coach. But he always went like the extra mile to make sure that you understood, or if you didn't get something or whatever case, he would always make sure that you were always taken care of, and or you knew what was going on, or you missed whatever, if you missed this play or missed this call or whatever case, he would always be there to make sure that you understood everything.
And what was, I mean, when you were here, the offense was, as you mentioned, it had its ups and downs, but for the most part, um, Hayden Fry's offenses in general, whether it be Don Patterson or, if it was obviously Bill Snyder, I mean, there were some explosive offenses, some
Yeah.
really good quarterback play. And that's kind of why I brought up earlier the difference between philosophy under Kirk and Hayden is more significant than I think people from the outside world realize. Um, I do want to transition a bit towards 2022. You have an interesting perspective as a former back. and Iowa's run game has not been a strength for quite some time, with the exception being 2020. And it was kind of a weird year because COVID, and you have all these, shortened season. You have teams like Wisconsin that didn't play a whole year. Minnesota dealt with all kinds of problems. Michigan State was a shell of itself. But Iowa ran the ball well. What is it that you feel holds Iowa back from consistently running the football? Is it the zone blocking scheme, as some people like to bring up? Is it not having, they've missed on some backs like Melvin Gordon and Eno Benjamin, guys who ended up going somewhere else and having elite careers? What would you attribute it to?
I mean, it's tough, and not, Iowa has had a lot of their coaches for a long time too. So there's not, in my opinion, not always like fresh, I would say, ideas or whatever the case, that are new schemes or whatever the case that might be coming through. And again, I'm just, saying, what could be happening. I'm not sure again, but I'm just saying, a lot of these schools, they get new offensive coordinator every 3 years or whatever the case may be. So that keeps a fresh mind and different perspective or whatever the case may be, that I've seen around in other programs and stuff. Iowa doesn't seem to do that too often or anything too. So that could be a thing. A lot of teams too. I mean, in the conference, they played Iowa for all these years too, and I would assume that they would be, very understanding of what is coming or what's going to happen or what's going on too.
What was it like growing up? And I know I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, but what was it like growing up as an in-state kid?
Well, anybody that knows me, I wasn't an Iowa fan at all. I was a big Notre Dame fan when I was growing up. Iowa happened to be like probably one of my last choices, but ended up going there. But but yeah, I was a big Notre Dame fan growing up. Rocket Ishmael and Tim Brown and all those guys from Notre Dame. That was like what I loved watching growing up and stuff. But like back in the day too, I used to Nick Bell and some of these backs and stuff that Iowa had too. I love watching them also.
I got to ask you about this. What was it like coaching for Bobby Petrino? He's a very controversial figure just because of what went down there. I don't want to ask you about that specifically, about his infidelities or accusations, but what was it like coaching with you? What was it? You coached one season, correct?
Yeah. Well, I was there a couple, but yes. But Coach Petrino, I knew Coach Petrino before he became a big time head coach and stuff. He was offensive. God, what was he? The quarterbacks coach when I was in Jacksonville. So I knew him way back then. And then, like in the professional level, you spend a lot of time with your offense coordinator and your quarterback coach and things like that. So I knew him again, like way before he was a, big time head coach, but just a brilliant offensive mind. Just had a very good gift of just play calling and putting kids and players in the right position at the right time, especially on offense. He was very, very, great at that. And just, he was great facilitator and a head coach in my eyes when I spent the time with him. And again, I knew him before he became big time head coach and stuff. So it just reigns differently with me. Sometimes when I see these guys, they're moving up the chain or moving up the ladder and stuff like that. And I'll be, oh yeah, I remember him when he was a GA and, and stuff like that. So it's always just great to see, like their success and things like that. I'm sorry to hear that, Coach Petrino had little troubles and stuff like that, but things happen sometimes in life. He's human just like anybody else out here.
Are you a bigger Notre Dame fan or Iowa fan?
I mean, when I was growing up, I was big Notre Dame. I'm not a big Notre Dame fan now. It's just like when I was growing up, I loved Notre Dame just because they had dynamic players back then. That I just Todd Light, like all these dynamic players they had at Notre Dame that I loved watching. And plus, like back then too, like Notre Dame was one of the only schools that you played they played on TV every weekend. So, like you always could watch a Notre Dame game. So that was probably another reason why.
If they join the Big Ten someday, would you rekindle your love for the Irish?
No.
No.
No, it's just, that was just a childhood,
Okay.
growing up thing, like I just enjoyed. I mean, I enjoy, like, nowadays I enjoy, rooting for teams that my friends are coaching for, and on the staff and things like that for. So that's why I enjoy watching nowadays.
I had to, obviously I was trying to do some research on what I didn't know about Tavian Banks prior to this show, and I believe I read on Wikipedia. Wikipedia still believes that you're at Naperville High School as an assistant coach. How
Yeah.
long has it been since you were there as a coach?
Oh man, Naperville, gosh, I was there. Gosh, this had to be like '09, maybe.
Goodness gracious alive!
Yep, I know, right?
Why don't they update that? You need to
I,
go in there and
I
update that.
I don't know how that stuff works, so it's not. Again, don't believe everything you read on Wikipedia. So,
I guess not. You're right here in the state of Iowa, and I do want to ask you too. We brought up Notre Dame conference expansion. We talked too about NIL and the portal. What are your thoughts on USC and UCLA joining the conference? And now there's rumblings that the Big Ten may end up with a couple more Pac-12 schools, and of course they're going after Notre Dame.
mhm.
What's your thoughts on expansion?
I mean, unfortunately, but it's fortunate. I mean, it's just the money and the TV deals. It's big business nowadays. There's nothing really anybody is going to be able to do about it. You know, uh, Getting those schools is going to be great, but also, I would say, terrible in a sense, because like, you're going to be flying to California for a game, like during, whenever you're going to be out there and get out there and stuff like that. And then, like other sports, obviously, too, like you could be flying on a Tuesday or whatever the case may be, if playing basketball game or whatever it is. So I like those things. I think are going to be tougher for athletes and the coaching staff and things like that. And I mean, obviously the school aspect too. Just traveling a lot more during these times, and not just like your neighboring states anymore. So it's going to be a lot more like travel time, a lot more. I would say tutoring or whatever the case may be. That's going to be happening, at the hotel, or on the charter, or whatever the case may be.
When's the last time you've been in Kinnick, Davian?
Oh man, last time I went, it's been over a decade. I was a honorary captain. I forget when gosh, when this had to be over a decade ago. I was honorary captain for, I think it was Minnesota game. Last time I've been back to Kinnick.
Well,
I
and
can,
it's been. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean that's the last time I've been back. That that I can think of. Yes. Yep.
Um,
That long.
it's been a couple of years. We're a couple of years removed now from the passing of Coach Fry.
Mhm.
And this is the first time you and I have talked in this setting. What did Coach Fry mean to you? And was that a how difficult was that? Obviously his health had been deteriorating for some time, but how
Mhm.
difficult was that?
I mean, it's just, like all the things, all the players and just coaches and everybody. I mean, it was just a big loss, even for the state of Iowa. Hayden Fry was he was just a big figure. Legendary coach. Like I had Hayden at the end of his coaching career. Wasn't doing too much coaching, but but he was great, like storyteller. I would say. I mean, just coaching that long, you got all types of everything underneath the sun to talk about, and stories to tell about families and players and situations and games and all that type of stuff. So it was always just fascinating, just talking to him, because he would have a story for everything that you think that you went through. He went through it 10 times with somebody else already. So so it's always just a great perspective, and great person to just like know and just speak to at times, for sure.
And so give us an idea at that point. You mentioned you're right. You were at the tail end of Hayden's time here, but how does that dynamic change? How did it change? I should say, from year one to your senior year, your final year here. How did it change as far as Hayden's involvement?
I don't think it. And again, like I wasn't, paying attention. I would say paying attention like that. When I say he wasn't coaching like that, he spent a lot of time like up in the tower. Like
Right.
back when you used to have this big wooden tower. Coach Fry would be up there at the top watching practices and things like that. So I'm sure he was doing a lot of other coaching, obviously behind the scenes and things like that, but not too much like on the field type of things were happening all the time. And that as I started to get more of a senior and things like that, I think Coach Patterson started to take over more call playing and things like that too. So that's why I mean by I was at the tail end of his coaching career.
Call lines are slow this evening. I guess people are getting ready for week 0, which starts tomorrow. Are you? How do you feel about the Huskers' chances tomorrow in Ireland?
Huskers chance in Ireland. I don't know. I know Coach Scott Frost there. We trained, in
Really?
Atlanta back when we were playing days and stuff like
Okay.
that. And he was kind of like in between, just like I was. So I know him from training days and stuff. So I'm always rooting for him, just like personally, because we spent time together and trained and things like that. But yeah, I mean it's tough, like he's been a winner in all the places that he's been at and stuff. He's having a tough deal at Nebraska. Not sure like how he's going to be able to turn it around or get it going more so and everything. But I'm always like rooting for, again, like people that I know in coaching and things like that. So I'm not like rooting against Nebraska or anything like that. I'm rooting for Coach to do well.
Michael Dwight says, Tavian, you played with my nephew Tim Dwight. What was it like to? I guess we've got Tim's uncle in the chat, but what was it like to uh, play with Tim Dwight? I mean, what was he just?
I mean, it was just me and Tim are still great friends to this day.
He still lives in Des Moines, correct?
No, he's well, well, Tim's kind of like a nomad, but
Is
he's
he
all over
live
the
in Des
place.
Moines? Oh, 'cause he does.
But I believe he's in Kansas. He
Okay.
might have a place in California still, or in Iowa City and things like that. But he's all over the place. But I mean, it's just a great. I'm being able to play with Tim was just a great honor. Especially just knowing we're both from Iowa. He's from Iowa City. I'm from Bettendorf. So we known of each other growing up all those years, and then I was a grade above Tim, so we didn't necessarily like play against each other growing up until high school days. But we definitely knew of each other growing up and things like that before high school. So when we got to Iowa, it was just great to see Tim, and his work ethic, and he's not like a big dude or anything like that. I mean, like great heart, obviously great speed and things like that too. But just his work ethic all the time, like he never took anything off, no days off, no, it left everything out on the field. He didn't care if you were 320 pounds. He would take you on all those type of traits that love to see in a football player. Tim always had all of that going on.
And I was going to ask you exactly that because he's not the biggest guy. Well, I consider him to be the opposite of big. I mean, I've stood next to him. He's a smaller guy in
Yes.
size, but man, have you ever seen anybody that small run that fast?
Me, yes, I've seen people run
You've
that
seen your
fast. But yes, I mean, like Tim was very, very fast, and especially, like for, uh, he was very track fast, I would say. Also on top, but he was just
right.
a football player on top of it. Because you get a lot of guys that are track fast that can't really play football. But they're fast at obviously on the track and stuff. But Tim was a football player who happened to run track, if that if
Right.
that makes sense. But he was very fast at track too. So again, it's just always just a pleasure to be able to have played with him those years, and also just be from Iowa, and we grew up and all those type of things together.
Final question, and then we're going to take a short break and finish up by really hitting this season ahead. But I want to get to Erica's her super chat here. Appreciate this from Erica. Would Tavian ever consider coming to Iowa to coach or be the OC? Now, no one's asking Tavian. She's not asking. She may be asking you, but I'm not going to put you in the spot. This had nothing to do with Brian Ferentz or anything, but I think it's a fair question. Would that ever be something? Are you done with coaching completely?
I would say never not done. Yeah, I mean, just the right situation would have to come along. Being able to get back into it and be on a great staff and things like that. I would say never say never. Again, I have very great friends and coaches that are out there that are in position next to be a head coach and all those types of things. So I would never, say that I'm not going to coach again or anything like that. I did love it when I was in it. And it's something, I wish, I could have stayed in it at that time and stuff like that. So, I would just never say never. You never know what's going to happen. Again, it goes back to life is like a box of chocolates. You never know you never know what you're going to get. So,
and I'm curious, have you lived in Iowa City since playing here?
No. I mean, great college town, I would say. So I don't think I could live back in Iowa unless I was coaching. But but I don't know if I could live in Iowa City again.
Well, you've got obviously Marv Cook as a coach in the area, and Iowa's got plenty of former, obviously Kirk players with Abdul Hodge now, Liddell Betts on staff. So
yes,
we'd love to see you someday maybe be able to be part of the program and the staff. We're going to get to more with Tavian Banks here in a moment, including his take on the season. You're welcome to call us. It's kind of been a slow nights on the line, but plenty of great questions in the chat. We're going to get to some of those here in a moment, including I want to ask him a question about the quarterback position, even though he was a running back. So we'll get to that here in just a couple of minutes. But first, we'll take a quick break. Hey fans, let's talk about health and performance optimization for a moment. Our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, offers amazing products. It's actually owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler. Now, I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of their unique approach to human health. Ascent offers an organically grown, mold and mycotoxin-free coffee. It provides a pure, clean, and rich flavor without those pesticides that most coffees are treated with. They also offer an algae oil DHA, which is used to support brain health, memory, and focus, as well as proper nervous system development in adults, children, athletes, and even pets. Now, lastly, their unique crafted wild pine pollen is used to support cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Your purchase not only supports this channel, but the business of a former Hawkeye. Visit goascentnutrition.com or click the link in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes. That's the code Hawkeyes to receive 10% off your total order from Ascent Nutrition. And want to let everybody know that that number has now changed to 15% off. So if you use that code Hawkeyes at goascentnutrition.com, then we've upped that to 15% off your total order. So great stuff for great products. Ascent Nutrition, goascentnutrition.com. Tavian Banks with us here on this Friday evening as we count down the days. Just 8 days until the start of Hawkeye football. We've got week 0 action tomorrow. I'll be releasing my picks for week 0. Really, there's just one. I mean, we got the Illinois-Wyoming game, but just the one game I mentioned in Ireland between the Huskers and the Wildcats. It's really of note, and then things get ramped up next Thursday with the Penn State-Purdue battle, which will be an essential game for the race for the West. Tavian, I want to, first of all, get to a question from a listener here. Lemansky says, what Hawkeye players influenced you and why? And before you answer that, let me take a guess. I'm going to guess that you're going to say there were few Hawkeye players that influenced you because, as you mentioned, you grew up a Notre Dame fan. I mean, how in touch with the Iowa program did you stay? Were you somewhat of an Iowa fan growing up because you lived in the state?
No, I wasn't an Iowa fan at all. A lot of my friends and stuff like that were Iowa fans. So, I would hear about it. Obviously, you're in the state of Iowa, too, so you're going to hear about Iowa games and things like that. But I wasn't, watching, I would say, on the weekends, Iowa games growing up. So again, like I would record Notre Dame games or a lot of the players out there that were dynamic. I would record Miami games. I would record just like players that I really enjoyed watching all the time, in an electrifying type of way. So those are kind of like the games and stuff that I was watching when I was growing up.
Favorite Iowa running back of all time? You can't say yourself.
Well, I mean, I'll definitely say Cedric Shaw. Just a great, me and Ced are great friends still to this day, but just a great running back. To me, taught me a lot. Even though he was just a grade above me or whatever the case, or a year above me. But it was just, the way he prepared for games, the way he did, practice every week, the way he showed up to every game. Said, like he was just a great, back, to be underneath or whatever, all those years and stuff. So I'll definitely say Cedric Shaw for sure.
And question from Mike 3883, your favorite games or maybe memories as a Hawkeye?
Well, I always tell people this all the time. One of the worst games I recall, I think I was the redshirt, sophomore, or maybe in a freshman. We played at Penn State, and that was the year they won like co-national championships or whatever. And we looked like a little high school team out there. I think I was a sophomore at the time. No, I had to be a redshirt freshman, I believe. But all I can remember is that damn nifty lion roar thing going off all day long. I think we lost like 62 to something. I think we had maybe 12 or something like that, whatever it was, but we just got crushed that day. And again, they had like number one pick, Kajana Carter, like all these guys, number one draft picks, from Penn State that year that happened. And then, I specifically remember that because a couple years later, we came back and beat Penn State at Penn State. It was my junior year. We beat them at Penn State. And I just remember like the crowd going silent, and it was definitely total change of what I experienced, a couple years earlier when we were able to do that. And that's one of my like just fondest memories of, coming in as a young player and just like, getting crushed, but also just looking like a high school team out there, and there's nothing that we could do, and able to come back, a couple years later with basically almost like the same team. But obviously, we have we're getting older, or more in age and all that type of our years and stuff like that. But also just more veteran team that came back and we're able to beat them.
Do people still call you Big Money?
No, I don't think so.
Nobody calls you Big Money anymore.
No, they don't call Big Money, man.
What's going on, man?
I don't know.
When did that start? Did that start in high school?
I don't know. Like I don't know if anybody's I don't know. Like I would hear it sometimes or whatever, but it wasn't like an ongoing thing that somebody called me that all the time.
Okay.
I would say fans or whatever case more so would call me that. But I wouldn't. None of my like friends were calling me that or anything like that. So
yeah. I want to ask you about. I mean, we're running out of time, but Blake brings up Tyler Goodson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much you follow the NFL, but he's certainly got an opportunity to kind of break the spell of Iowa running backs in the league. Just your thoughts early on his performance. I don't know how much you've watched him in the preseason, but you think he's got an opportunity to carve out a role in the 53-man roster?
Oh, I hope so. Like again, I root for all Iowa players to be able to make 53-man roster, but not just make it, but also just be able to shine and show their talent, and being able to give an opportunity to actually do that also. Because like a lot of times you're not even. I mean, you get drafted and stuff like that, but you're not even like in the plans and stuff like that. You're just a body in camp and things like that happen a lot. So to be able to make a 53-man roster is a great opportunity, and hopefully he's going to be able to do that, and then also be able to actually contribute and play and things like that too is going to be a blessing for him. So hopefully he does a great job, and he'll continue to do it also.
You stay in touch with Fred Taylor?
Like we have texted each other before. So yeah, I
Okay.
mean, when I say that, I mean it's been, like we're not in contact all the time or everything, but
Yeah.
yes, we have texted each other.
For anybody that doesn't remember, I believe you guys were drafted in the same year, correct?
Yes, yep. So Fred was the first rounder
Yeah.
Jacksonville picked. I happened to go in the fourth round that year.
And you had a couple knee. Did you have 3 different knee injuries?
Well, I had three torn ligaments, torn hamstring, stretched nerve, all in one hit. So like even to this day, my knee doesn't bend all the way, it doesn't straighten all the way. I still have numbness on the outside of my leg. I had drop foot. If anybody knows what drop foot is, you can't pull your foot up or anything like that. So I walked around with a boot and cane for 9 months, after I had surgery. That like when I got injured in Jacksonville. So moved to California, did shock treatments on my leg, like for 8 months or whatever case to see if any of my nerve was going to grow back. It grew back some. I was able to start walking without a boot and cane anymore. Those type of things happen. And I'll go through a story. So I started teams were kept calling to see if I was going to make a attempt to come back or anything like that. I had no plans on trying to come back or anything like that. So I started to be able to walk okay a little bit. Then I started to be able to jog, and then I could run. But I never regained like the speed or anything like that. I could. If you wouldn't know, I ran probably the fastest time in Iowa history, but it was 4.27 at, at the combine. I mean, like at our college or whatever case at the university. So I went from that to being running like a 4.4, which is still kind of fast, but when you're growing up all my life and stuff, I've been a fast and quick back, and then I didn't. Like when you go from that type of speed to just okay speed or whatever case, it's totally different for me because I wasn't able to be able to pull away from people. I wasn't able to do all the stuff that I was commonly doing before. So I made it back and I played, like with New Orleans. I was, like on the practice squad and stuff like that. But I was just never the same player. So I knew it was just time for me to, hang it up if that makes sense.
How much has the thought of CTE and what's gone on over the years? How much has the thought of CTE come into your mind over the years with just the advanced research on it and knowing the position you played?
Oh yeah, I mean, like it just, I could say it's a high possibility, like something like that could happen, and I say that with a lot of players, it could happen, just because of all the things that have happened. Like back when I was growing up, they didn't diagnose you as having, any time you just got your bell rung, if that makes sense. You didn't really like come out of the game. You might have came out for a play or something like that. They didn't diagnose you as having a concussion, back then. So like I got my bell rung a lot of times, especially the position that I played in running back, and sat out one play and went back right back in the next play. Or sometimes I'll be walking towards the other sideline or something like that. Yeah, that happened a lot of times over my career for sure. But you knock on wood, hopefully, I'm gonna be okay, going into my lighter, second half of my life here and stuff like that. But again, it's a big possibility for a lot of guys that play a contact sport, especially like football.
And I mean, it's acknowledgement that a lot of guys seem to be fine. I mean, I don't know
Mhm.
if that's just the outside perception, but you hear about the guys who have suffered from CTE, and of course, Junior Seau gets brought up, and
Yep.
other guys. I mean, Tyler Sash. I don't know if that
Mhm.
certainly his story is maybe an indication that some guys are more predisposed to it at a young age. Uh,
Yes.
but it's a discussion we can have on a different day. I do want to spend the last few minutes talking about Iowa because I did kind of deem this to be an Iowa show. Uh, but Blake says, "Who was the better running back, you or Sean Green?" I believe you two have well, Sean beat your record, right? Your single season record for yardage, I believe, in 2008.
Mhm.
And he talk about a guy who I mean, just Sean's personality. I don't know Sean, but from everything I've
Mhm.
heard, he's just a really laid back guy and doesn't like media. I don't know that I've ever heard him do an interview, Tavian. Ever.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I don't. I mean, I called him one time when he broke the record and stuff. I spoke to him briefly. I think it was in the locker room or whatever case. But seems like real great guy. Nothing against him or whatever case, but not for me. I was very. And again, anybody knows me. I don't brag or boast or any of that type of stuff. But I was very dynamic back. I had home run speed, home run quickness. People were standing on the edge of their seats or whatever the case may be when I was touching the ball. So I don't know like how many other backs you can really say that about, other than maybe Cedric Shaw or something like that have came through the Iowa system. So I don't. Sean Green was kind of like a more like power back and 5 yards here, 5 yards there, 10 yards there, but not like the home run, 82 yards, not once, two, three times a game. That's the stuff that I was doing.
and honestly, in the Kirk era, I mean, after Sean Green, you probably go Albert Young.
Mhm.
Uh, but I mean, there haven't been a lot of guys, and I'm just curious. This kind of good segue to 2022. The quarterback position is a position that is always under scrutiny. But I want your honest opinion. I know you've been completely honest in this conversation, but do you have faith that Spencer Petras or whoever is the quarterback will get it done this year? And if so, why?
To be honest with you, I think that there'll be an Iowa quarterback, if that makes sense. I don't know. I mean, there's never to me. There's no telling. I mean, it could be the year we go 12-2 again, and then it could be the year we go, 7-6 or whatever it is. I mean, there's no telling, year to year right now what could happen. So I mean, I just there's no rhyme or reason or anything like that. I have no idea.
What were your initial thoughts when Brian Ferentz was promoted during this past offseason to QB's coach?
I mean, it's not anything out of the ordinary that happens. Uh, Meaning, when there's family involved and like you're trying to get your son more whatever it is up the ladder or more responsibilities or any of that type of stuff. That I mean, it happens to anywhere. It happens in Fortune 500 companies. It happens people's own businesses. It happens anywhere you go. You want to try and have your child or whatever the case may be do well. And if you're helping it or trying to help him do well too. That I mean, it's not out of preview of college coaching or NFL coaching or high school coaching or anything. It happens in life, and he Kurt has the pull to be able to keep doing that. So I
A little bit
mean,
different
I
when
don't
you're talking.
fault him. I don't like it's he has the credentials or whatever case to keep doing it. That's what I was choosing to do.
A little bit different when you're talking about a public institution than you're talking about a CEO of a private company, though.
Well, I mean, there's public companies too that have CEO that are doing the same thing. So I mean, it's
Sure.
not anything out of the ordinary that hasn't happened in over the whole human race of time here. So it's not anything again out of the ordinary that he is doing. Again, his son has the credentials to be able to do it. They seem to keep wanting to do it. So that's like what they're going to do right now.
Talk about running backs. Iowa, we know a young group. You lose Tyler Goodson, who's off to the league. You lose Mekhi Sargent 2 years ago, who was certainly productive in his role. And you bring in a couple guys, one of which is from Des Moines, Gavin Williams,
Mm-hmm.
who will likely start. Although I've heard great things about LaShawn, saw great things from LaShawn Williams at the open practice here a couple of weeks ago. You have Caleb Johnson, who's the freshman from Ohio, who's a bigger back. I know maybe you're not as familiar with those guys yet because you haven't seen them in actual pads, but um, what do you see from Iowa's running backs this year? You're a former back. Give us some insight on Gavin, the two Williams guys, first of all.
Well, again, it's just are they going to be able to get the looks and be able to play enough to contribute a lot? I mean, it's hard when it's running back by committee a lot of times, and that's kind of like a lot that has happened with the running back position right now. Everybody goes with these running backs by committee, and there's not really like a workhorse or a every down back or any of that type of stuff that happens, and that's the landscape that as football has gone right now. So the back, like a lot of these running backs are really not. They're very replaceable, if that makes sense. So it's very hard to get great looks if you're only touching the ball, 3 or 4 times a game. It's hard to make a very good impact on those things, and it's hard for those guys too to keep, I mean, just their mental and everything else. When like they might have been the person or the man in high school, and they get into college and they're only getting 3 or 4 snaps a game, like their whole career and stuff like that too. So it's just tough, like all around for a running back nowadays for sure.
So are you of the opinion that it would be better for an Iowa to find a guy who can handle the workload? Or is it more just a situation where your roster and personnel determines that? I mean, like every coach
Mhm.
would probably like to have a marquee back like yourself or Cedric Shaw or Sean Green or even Albert Young. But I mean, is that, or do you think that you can sort of, um, as far as philosophy, change your philosophy to where you can find that lead back, if you will?
I don't know. Again, like I just think it's the dynamic of football right now. There's not a lot of because because there's not a lot of lead backs anymore because it's running back by committee.
Sure.
So there's a lot of college systems that are just a lot of running backs are playing, so they have 3 or 4 in the stable, and there's not really like you know Barkley from New York or whatever when he was at Penn State. There's not a lot of that going on anymore in college football.
And even
So
Barkley had Miles Sanders behind him, who is
yes,
now a terrific NFL back.
yes,
Better
absolutely.
NFL back than Barkley, honestly, at
Right,
the moment.
right.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, but Barkley's had, he's
yeah,
been injured a couple years
yes,
and stuff like that.
right.
So, hopefully, knock on wood for him, he's able to
I
come back
drafted by the way,
this year
I
strong.
drafted Barkley in my fantasy team, so he better come through this year, but he needs to
Well,
shut up.
he's supposed to be all healthy and everything now, so
He's
we'll
supposed to
we'll
be.
see. Yeah, we'll see how he does.
I will say this though, Wisconsin, a lot of Iowa fans would point to Wisconsin and say, "Well, Tavian, college football's changed, but Wisconsin always has a lead back. They
Yep,
always have a workhorse.
I
Why are
know.
they able to do it and Iowa's not?"
I mean, again, it's probably the system. They're able to get the system in place where they're featuring a lot more of the lead back. Again, like I don't, obviously follow Wisconsin stuff. I'm not sure like how their passing game is or any of that other stuff. But I can't recall seeing a Wisconsin receiver, in the NFL or a tight end or anything like that. I obviously I could be wrong, but I don't remember seeing any of them doing that well or anything like that that I can remember in my head right now. But again, it's probably the system that they have that they're able to continue to bring whatever back that they're bringing up in Wisconsin and be able to feature them a little bit more.
Caleb Johnson's probably 6'1", 6'2", in that range, around 215, and he's a true freshman just enrolled. That's a big guy uh,
Yes.
to get into college. How old were you when you got to college?
Oh man, I was like 185, probably 5'10".
Okay.
I don't even know if I was 185. It might have been like 175.
Man,
175, 180.
that's small.
Well, yeah, I wasn't like a big back at all. I
Wow.
mean, like
Well,
my
sure.
senior year, I got to about like 205.
Okay. But still, though, that's a big.
200, 205.
Isn't that it's somewhat of a large jump, even for a running back to jump up 30 pounds throughout his
Well,
career?
I mean, not really, because I wasn't like I mean, again, like when I was growing up, I didn't lift weights or any of that type of stuff till my junior year of high school. That was the first time I started lifting weights. That's kind of I'm dating myself, but again, like performance training and strength and conditioning, that wasn't like a big thing, like when I was growing up and stuff, until again, like my junior year, high school, going in my senior year. That's kind of like where, performance training started to take off. And obviously when I got to the University of Iowa, like lifting on a regular basis, taking protein, all the things that they do when you get to, like a prominent program and things like that. That's where I started to gain muscle and all those type of things, and eating more, regularly and proper and things like that too. So that's how you're, like a lot of guys gain a lot of weight and muscle weight or whatever case when they get to college, because they're coming from, a high school program or whatever case that didn't really do that, on a consistent basis.
I can't remember. Did you redshirt, Tavian?
Yes, I did. I had shoulder surgery my senior year, like in the spring. So I was gonna have to redshirt my freshman year because I was rehabbing from shoulder surgery.
Had you not had the shoulder issue, would you have redshirted?
But I like back then too, I don't really think it was up to you. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if I would have had a choice
Well,
back then. So
the reason I asked is that Coach Patterson has said this over and over to me recently.
Mhm.
He has said anymore, I think redshirting is overrated.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
and that's interesting coming from an older coach like Don Patterson, but he recognizes the change in times. What makes a true freshman like a Caleb, and that's why I'm kind of trying to bring this full circle here. What makes a guy like Jazzy Patterson or Caleb Johnson, who are freshmen, who I think physically can play right away,
Yeah.
what makes the running back position a bit easier to learn than, obviously offensive line or a defensive linebacker?
Because like running back, it's a lot with instincts. You can learn like the plays and the things and the concepts and stuff like that, but a lot of it is run off of instincts. So you can't really like teach that. Like as a running back. Yeah, I mean you can try and like help and guide and all those types of things, but you either have it or you don't have it, like in a sense. So if you're a running back and you're able to enjoy, just the concepts and the plays and things like that, and get it, accomplish that an earlier like year or whatever case, when you're a freshman or a sophomore or something like that, it's great for that player, but also great for the university or the coaching staff that you're on.
How important was ball security when you got to Iowa?
Well, well, any running back, ball security is number one thing. Like anywhere you go, it's going to be ball security. You don't want to be known as a fumbler or anything like that. And plus, I mean, you don't want to let yourself down, but you don't want to let your teammates down or your team or anything like that either. So that's always going to be a number one thing, ball security.
What's the magic number for Iowa to have a successful offense this year, given the schedule? We know it gets a lot more difficult. Iowa goes 10-2. Heard people use the illustration of squeezing every last drop out of the bottle of ketchup. What Iowa did last year. I mean, they got everything they could, despite the offense that ranked 123rd at 130 teams. It's incredible that Iowa got to 10-2, but you credit elite special teams play, elite defensive play, and certainly turnover margin helps immensely in a subpar schedule. The schedule's not subpar this year,
Mm-hmm.
and you're likely not going to be able to create as many turnovers. How does Iowa use the run game to better its offense? What's the magic number for yards per carry, yards per game, etc.?
Wow. Now that's breaking it down a whole lot there. I wouldn't even know how to attempt to do that one right there. Yards per carry and stuff like that.
Is it four?
I have no idea. Like
Four yards per carry is modest, right?
I don't even know, man. To be honest with you. But I mean, just having a successful season for them would be great. Again, you never know what you're gonna get with Iowa. Like again, it could be whatever it is, like 7-6 season, or again we could go 10-2. So, like the defense could just play out of their minds all season long again. We could have a lot of turnovers. Some of these freshmen could, really blossom already and be helping out in great ways. So again, you never know. That's why they play the game. You got to be able to play the game. So I have no idea how to predict it at all.
Do you know what you averaged during your
No, no clue what I averaged. I know it's a lot though. So now,
that's interesting. You don't know what you averaged. I'm
no, I wasn't really like I didn't pay attention to like stats or anything like that. To be honest with you, I enjoyed playing the game, and and not again like bragging or anything like that, but it it was like that my whole life. So it wasn't anything different when I got to the University of Iowa. Like I never paid attention to stats or anything like that. I was always good or a great football player. So I didn't need to pay attention to like how many yards a game I had or how many touchdowns I had or any of that type of stuff. I came from a great program in Bettendorf, a winning program, and it just it continued on when I got to the University of Iowa too. But I didn't really like pay attention to stats like that at all.
I want to know what how many yards you rushed for in your record breaking season. I know you just said you don't.
Well, I know that was I know that one because the people remind me all the time, and I have like a poster of it. I think it's 319. Yeah.
It's what?
319 yards. I remember that.
Oh no, not single game, entire season.
Entire season. No, I know it was like 16 something in that 16 in my senior year at 16 something.
The number I saw was 1691.
Okay. 1691. Okay, there you go. Yep, 16 something.
Still second place in Iowa history. So
yeah,
what a feed. Final thing, you see part of the schedule at the bottom of the screen with the likes of South Dakota State, Iowa State at home, Nevada at home, then the trip to Piscataway at Rutgers. They get Michigan back at home in a rematch from the Big Ten championship game, and then Illinois on the road. As tough as the schedule is this year, Tavian, that's not murderer's row. That's a very doable schedule, and I think there's no reason to think that you're not 5-1 if you take care of business. Even if you lose that home game against Michigan, which I think they have a shot at winning because it's going to be a marquee game at home in Kinnick. I don't see any reason why you're not 5-1. Am I wrong?
Yeah, again, it could be anything. Hopefully they don't because they play very well in tight games all the time. But they could be 1-5 also.
Don't say that.
No telling.
And then of course,
hopefully they don't. I was done a great job. Kurt's done a great job over his 10 years, his tenure or whatever. So again, they've always never. I don't remember the last time I was even got blown out of a game under Ferentz, coaching and stuff like that. So I don't think they've always been in the game, and just barely, if they lose, they lose by 5 or, 7 or something.
Don't make me remind you of the Big Ten championship game last year.
Well, yes. So things like that do happen, but it doesn't happen too often, I would say, especially on the Iowa defense that they've had.
And Iowa has that knack of winning close games. They're going to have to do that in the second half of the season. You see on the road at Ohio State, Northwestern at home, at Purdue, Wisconsin, at Minnesota, Nebraska. It's a tough final 6 of the year. Tavian, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, and it's great to know you're back in the state of Iowa. Best wishes in your ventures, your family, and enjoy some Hawkeye football this year, and we'll have you back on.
All right. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right, folks. Thank you for being here this evening. And if you do want to sponsor the show, remember, a week from tomorrow, we'll have myself and Coach Don Patterson following Iowa's season opener against South Dakota State. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, you can email me at the email below on the bottom ticker. And this show, of course, will be podcasted on all your major platforms. Search From the Hawkeye of the Storm. For Tavian Banks, I'm Corey Barata. We'll talk to you soon.